A real estate agent, a single sole proprietor, so to speak,
Mhm.
having their own systems, we get into real estate and we're just kind of aimlessly wondering whenever we venture into the position of realtor and feeling out what it looks like to help a buyer purchase a home,
Mhm.
feeling out what it looks like to list a property and price it properly. Hindsight, it's sales. It seems like what could be easy. I love homes. I can help somebody buy a home. I
Mhm.
love homes. I can help somebody sell a home. And, just thinking back to the day that I started, I had no idea what I wanted my business to look like. I had no idea that I was going to build a team and end up where I ended up with my business. But every transaction, you learn a little bit more.
Mhm.
And as you're learning, depending on where you want your business to go, one of my favorite books is The E-Myth. And it talks about how when you're good at a trade and you're working for somebody, you get tired of making that person money. So the person leaves that trade and starts their own business. But hindsight, all we've done is we've created a job for ourselves. Unless we look at our profession as building the systems to duplicate, we're never going to get out of the quagmire of doing it ourselves. And when you had made that comment, when we first popped
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
about as a single real estate agent, you have systems, you have processes, but where the hitch and the giddy up happens is in the transferring of the delegation of all of the facets that come along with those systems and processes.
Mhm.
We're going through the motions, we're doing it as it comes up. So there's really no defined in writing way to just hand it over to somebody. And that's a big problem when it comes to trying to step out or trying to even grow. We hang on so tightly to our own negotiation skills. We hang on so tightly to our own everything in our business that we don't want to let it go because we don't trust. And it's not that it's just we don't want to let it go because we don't trust. It's that we don't have that proper system actually in writing. And that's why I was so passionate
Mhm.
about, we're just going to call it the filters and Agent Locator. Because Agent Locator and the systems of being able to build something and hire somebody to it. Click this button, click this button, click this button.
Mhm.
So when you come in and you sit down at your desk, you have a job to do
Yes.
and you can explain it. And when you're doing it, you can track the metrics. So when we're just out there building a team, if we don't have any way to track the metrics, we have no way of holding accountability. And it makes it really difficult to fire somebody or to
Mhm.
eliminate somebody, because just because they didn't meet your expectations is not a good enough reason to get rid of somebody. So we end up keeping people too long on the bus, and
Mhm.
then it really saps the energy out of us.
Yes.
So
Makes
real
sense.
estate can be as easy or as complex as what we want to make it. The question is, we are in the service industry.
Mhm.
You are your brand. It is up to each individual real estate agent on how they want to build to exit. And
Mhm.
no one's thinking exit strategy when they're just trying to get a deal.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm paying for Agent Locator, I'm paying for leads, I just want to get a deal. We're
Mhm.
not thinking about an exit strategy. And thinking about an exit strategy can really change the game on how you attack today's mission, on how you attack today's goals. Because
Mhm.
what you're doing today is where you're going to be in 60 to 90 days in real estate. But also, it's where you're going to be in 6 to 9 years.
Mhm.
Where are you going to be at in retirement? Are you building and structuring your business to be able to exit it? And I think a lot of people look at Agent Locator or look at a dashboard or look at a lead generating system as a way to cultivate business. And yes, it is. On the onset, that's the first thing we think of. I'm going to pay for leads. I'm going to get leads. I'm going to close them. But at the end of the day, it's a much bigger picture to exiting and retiring out of your business, to have something salvageable to sell.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this, of the entire system. There's way more opportunity and there's way more value in Agent Locator than it just being a lead generator or a lead incubator.
Absolutely. I've had those like exit strategies, even sometimes with older, more seasoned realtors, where they're starting to, they know within the next 5 to 10 years, they want to be able to retire. And really, if you're building a database, and as long as you're working that database, you could essentially sell that database, right? Because you know there's business sitting in there, you know there's repeat business sitting in there. And that sometimes as well, where the unbranded approach is also beneficial, because now you're selling the brand as, you know, let's say torontohomes.com. That's the brand you're selling, along with this entire database. I'm not trying to sell Crystal DeVries, where everyone just works with Chris and knows me, but also those systems help you exit because you have everyone running the business. Like any business, not even real estate, as you may know, if the business is reliant completely on yourself, you are the business. You cannot sell that. You have to be part of the business. You're always part of the business in order to make it work. That's why you have to have corporate managers, all those different things that take on those roles where you just oversee, so you can pass it on. And regardless of who's purchasing it, they can just pick up and go and keep those systems in place. There's a lot of it.
Open it up. Let's open it up. Now, we started with conversation that's way different, but totally on topic. Let's open it up to Q&A. And what I always like to ask, what's the rock in your shoe? What do you want to take away from you? If you're taking time out of your day to spend this hour with us, what do you want to take away from? What would help you maximize some systems and processes in your business? What would help you have better conversations? What would help you connect with the leads better? What would help you write better contracts? Anything real estate related, it's all out on the table right now. So we're looking for some interaction. I know somebody did make a comment that they've missed several classes and they need a quick refresher. And what is that quick refresher? What refresher are you looking for? What would be helpful? And while we're waiting on typing, takes a minute. Crystal, what are some things that are coming up customer service wise when you are getting calls and people are calling in asking questions, or they're calling in because I know we never have any complaints from anyone who's using Agent Locator. What's some common themes that are reoccurring for you all on the customer service side?
Customer service is usually lead quality, right? So lead quality, no one answers their phone. Everyone's just looking, no one's really motivated to do anything. So really, like, one of the biggest things would be that lead quality, which we both understand lead quality is quantity over quality when it comes to online leads. But those are probably the top two when it comes to what's coming in. If somebody's like deciding to pull back on their lead generation, things like that. What we primarily see on the training side of things is, and we've witnessed it where we've had people on here and they're like, no one answers, and then you do, and you have all these conversations, aligned meetings. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? They're in there. It's just a matter of finding them and calling and being consistent with that. But one of the biggest things that I'll see is someone saying no one answers, and I'll see one call logged on that person, one call. So the effort of trying to gain the conversation isn't necessarily there. We're seeing a lot of people who call one time expecting that people are going to answer. And then, of course, when they don't answer, it's like, all these leads are all garbage. No one answers the phone. No one's doing anything, right? So it's really down the motivation, but understanding what leads are, essentially that expectation of what you're going to receive from online leads.
You know, what's funny, as you were talking about that, I'm sitting there remembering in so many of my trainings, I hear nobody is motivated to buy. Every lead is a bad phone number. Everybody is just looking.
Mm-hmm.
And is it really every lead? Is it really everyone?
Mm-mm.
And to your point, you go back and you look and you're like, how many attempts have you actually made to be able to qualify that statement as fact?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy for us to tell the story to ourselves to justify why we're not doing and why we're not getting results.
Mm-hmm.
And I've caught my husband doing it on a completely different other matter. He's like, everybody, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, is it really everybody?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back to the same story. I said, you know, when I train and I hear this, it's not really everybody. It's
like two people.
easy, right? But it's human nature that we focus on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's fun to talk about, because everybody loves to talk about how bad things are.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why there's so much gossip in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Why people thrive on watching the news. You don't turn the news on to watch the greatness that's happening in the world. You turn the news on and you see all the shit that's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just what we as human nature focus on. So it's not wrong. It's just really over embellished. Because it's a way for us to justify the story that we're telling ourselves. And it's that over exaggeration of what the real facts are. And yes, when we have a lot of money on the line, we have certain expectations, but yet we don't do everything that it takes to get there. And it's so funny, Crystal, because, you know, we get on these calls and I make phone calls and they hear me talking to people, and we have people that let us call their leads and like, oh my God, I just want to sound like you on the phone. You just sound so natural and so blah, blah. I have been there. I was that person that said every one of my leads was a bad phone number. I was that person that said my leads suck. I was that person. But the reality is, that was the story I was telling myself. And I could either continue to tell myself that story, or I could change my thought process and actually prove to myself, if I do everything possible to get a hold of these leads and convert, then I can say my leads suck.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is when I started applying the principles and got out of that negative mindset and just forgot about the expectation and just went through the process, holy shit, we started closing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell yourself the story, whatever story you want to tell yourself, but until you're actually doing it, and where that came from was the passion of, I have to save my leads from all these other real estate agents that I'm competing for business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm better than any other agent in my market. But those people don't know it. So it's my responsibility to get a hold of them and have a conversation so they understand the differences of all the other agents out there and what sets me apart, which hence brought about my value proposition, which hence changed my conversation, which hence changed the outcome of everything that I was going through. Or you could just keep sitting there calling AgentLocator and say my leads suck and knock down, right? Yeah. You're going from maybe $500 a month buying leads to, I'll just go down to $250 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So all we're doing is the same thing, expecting different results.
Yeah.
So what is it that you need to change in your day, and you need to change in your habits? Because until the things that we look at change, nothing's going to change.
No.
It's the way we look at things that change it.
Yeah. Like going to the gym one time and expecting to have the body you dreamed of.
I'm still waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
That is not yet happened. I actually even went 3 times last week and it still didn't happen.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, it
For
takes time.
sure.
That's the thing. The things that we want, we have to work for,
Yeah.
right? And nothing's instantaneous. That, the bigger picture of things, most things aren't instantaneous. We have to work towards those things. And there's a lot of contributing factors that play a role in the overall success, whether you're converting your leads, whether you're trying to get the perfect summer body. It's not just, go to the gym once a week and whatever else you might be doing, and then expect, great results, because, the people that have those bodies that some people desire to have, those guys are going to the gym 5 to 7 times a week. They're eating all the food that you have no interest in eating. They're doing everything it takes to achieve the goal that they've set for themselves.
Yep.
So
I
this is
see
just
a
a little bit different.
question in the chat. What do you
Yeah.
suggest we do if we are getting very few leads per month compared to the amounts we received in the past? Well, the magic component of that statement is the leads that you have received in the past. What are you doing with the leads that you've received in the past? Because those are people too. And if you look at every person in your database as having an individual story, all our job is to find out what their story is and how we could possibly fit into that story. So I don't care if the leads are 10 years old or 1 year old, they still have a story. And, if you have leads that are 10 years old, there's nothing stopping you from calling them and saying, hey, a long time ago, you were online looking at homes. And I'm just wondering, did you ever make that purchase? Yeah, 5 years ago, we're getting ready to move again.
Yeah.
Or yeah, last year, or no, we never did. Everybody has a story. We are selling nothing. We just want to know what their story is.
Yeah.
And if we can ever fit in. And this, I can guarantee you, every single person on the face of this earth will be moving or have moved. And the other majority of that will be moving again. So why am I charged for leads that
would be an email to support for them to look at your campaign. So it also depends on how much you're spending on Google. That's, one thing that we want to make sure. But that has nothing to do.
That is definitely one thing that I've learned about online leads is every area is different on what you pay per lead. And I was very lucky to have been in, I'm going to call it a bedroom community, because I didn't have a lot of competition for my leads. And I love the leads that are in remote areas because they are much cheaper and you do get a lot more leads and more value for your buck. Where when you're in the metro, right? Like the people that lived in Washington, D.C. and those big surrounding metro areas, those leads were on the upswing of $40 a lead, where I was at like 15, right? It was so cheap where I was that I was able to get more leads. And then that's that misnomer. People will be having conversations before they take on a commitment like Agent Locator, any lead generation. They'll be talking to 10 other agents. How much do you pay a month? How much do you pay for your leads? There's really no one set number of what you pay. It's really dependent upon your zip code and where you want to buy in your leads from. And that really comes down to knowing your target market. Because for me, what had happened at the end of the day, I'd have been way better off capturing leads up in the metro, because people were not commuting. They were relocating because it was a high military area and high government area, Washington, D.C. Hello, yes. So everyone wanted to live where they were going to be working. So they were Google searching homes in that location. So the agents that were paying for those leads got those leads. And if they got conversations with them, they realized those people couldn't afford to live there. So then you have those agents coming into my market. So we had zero market share where we were because, it was 34% actually, but 34% market share in our own community of all of us as agents in that area, which is horrible in a community. But that was the reason why. But I knew my stats so well that I knew what my competition was. I knew what the problem was. None of the other agents are sitting there looking at their numbers and looking at who is selling. I literally took my zip code, or you could take a subdivision, or you could condense your area. I was in a small enough area that I was able to use a zip code. So I took the zip code, I went back 1 year of sales, and they were selling like 500 and some sales. Because if you look at every listing that sold, I went through every listing and I wrote down every single agent on the buy side and on the listing side. And if they were repeating agents, I would put a little hash. So each agent would be written down, and some of them would have hashes next to it. So I knew exactly who sold what in my market.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I didn't know the agent, I would look up where they were from, where their office was. So if we don't know our market that in depth, we can sit and make all the excuses we want to make. But we have to know our ideal client, and we have to know their problem and what keeps them awake at night. And we have to be the solution. I don't care what you are selling. That is the magic to selling anything and rising above your competition. That number one thing is know your market, know what they need. And Crystal and I were talking about the restaurant that we've acquired here in Alabama. We are on a river out of the ocean. So we're right off the intercoastal. So we're one of the last stops, so to speak. We're at the end of the river, because you really can't go any further because the bridge is so low that you can't take a big boat under the bridge that's right next to our restaurant. But what is the number one thing at the end of the day when people are ending they need freaking ice.
Mm-hmm.
We sell a small 5 pound bag of ice for $3.
Yeah.
You can get it right up the street a mile, a 10-pound bag for $2.50. But the convenience of it, because they don't have a freaking car. Their problem is they're done. Ice is melted by the time they get to us, and they need ice to get back. So when you know and you can identify with your client, we sell ice like crazy, and it basically pays for our ice machine that we paid thousands of dollars for. So now we have ice for our restaurant. We're selling the ice to pay for the machine. Brilliant. But if we didn't focus and look at the problem and the ideal client, we actually had someone come into, opens our eyes. We had someone come into our restaurant and buy a bag of frozen fries that we had back in the freezer that we serve as a side with our hamburgers. They paid $60 for a bag of frozen French fries that we did not cook, because they live on the water. They were out boating all day. They had steaks back at home. They didn't want to boat back home and go out in the car to their store. So when you're looking for the person's problem and you can be that solution. So now that has created, oh my gosh, we're going to start selling pre-packaged boat meals for 2 people, for 4 people, for 6 people. Because we've identified a problem. But if we don't know our market, we don't know the problem, and we can't ever come up with a solution. So, I'm going to take that back to what we're paying for. There's a much bigger dynamic. And that's why I love to have fun with the conversations that I have, because the more conversations you have, the more discovery you're having about a commodity of what people are saying. But if we're not having the conversations, we don't know what the commodity is. And you can take it beyond your leads. You can take it out into your community. Go sit at a local bar at a restaurant. I don't care if you drink or not. Get a glass of water. Sit at the bar and start talking real estate with people. Say, hey, just wondering, when's the last time you bought a house? Because man, this housing market's crazy.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to talk real estate.
You talk. Just throw it in there whenever you can. My girlfriend does that. She just has this way of just somehow throwing it in there. When she's talking to somebody new, she wants to make sure that they are well aware that she sells real estate.
Yeah. Yep.
So she's always in that mind of prospecting, basically.
Well, it's like, I gotta know. Inquiry minds, right? I gotta know. And my best coach, question everything. Why? Why do you question everything? Because that's where the answers to life are.
Mm-hmm.
When you question everything, why? Well, why? Well, why is that? Because it's a very open-ended question, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not just a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me more about that. Oh, why did you buy that house then? Oh, why did you sell your house then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what made you make that decision?
Like a therapist session.
Yes. Well, and what's beautiful about
Yeah.
it is when you get people to start talking, they trust.
Mm-hmm.
So the more questions we ask, the
Yes.
more we get them to talk. And then at the end of that conversation, they're like, I don't even know why I told you all that.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't take much at all to get people to open up and talk. Now, I mean, you have your one, you have your few people that are just like completely shut down because you don't know what's going on with their
Yeah.
day. You don't know what
Mm-hmm.
happened with them right before you started having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But reality is, if we're not creating solutions, we're creating excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to say this, and it's not as easy to do this.
Yeah.
So if we're always solution minded, that's where the magic is. And when we look at our leads and we're thinking about, oh my God, I got 400 leads in my database. What do I do? What's the goal, right? What's the goal? My goal had always been have as many conversations as what I possibly can. How do we do that? Myriad of ways. Start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We have several forms of communication right now. You can text, you can email, and you can phone call. Technology, I love to hate it because it has made our lives very much easier in communication. However, it's also made it much more difficult for communication because there's so many robo-dialers and there's so much artificial intelligence now. The artificial intelligence is so good that when you answer your phone, you don't even know it's a freaking robot because they've gotten so good. I mean, look at TV. You've got cartoons. They're no longer drawn. It's computer imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks real. I mean, it's crazy, the technology that has changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
But people still crave that one-on-one. They still crave that real conversation, and they're always going to crave that. So it's that beautiful piece right now that customer service doesn't have to be exceptional anymore because average has become the new exceptional, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to know that you care now more than they ever did before. So when we think about question everything, what's your question? What's your form of communication and what's your question? Hey, are you still looking for a house? And don't overthink it. Just send it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not communicating with your leads and you're not doing anything with your leads, you don't have any result anyway. So if you actually text 50 people in your database and say, hey, are you buying a house this year? If 25 people tell you no, what's changed?
Mm-hmm.
25 people aren't buying a house, you're further ahead. But nothing has changed because you weren't doing anything with the leads anyway. So always ask yourself, what's your form of communication today? And how many conversations do you want to have? And how are you going to do it with that form of communication? Text and phone are the fastest way. Email is the slowest way. And texting goes against everything that's within me because you want a close-ended question.
Mm-hmm.
You just want a yes. You just want to know, because if you ask for a dissertation, you're going to get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because people mentally respond and then they forget about it. And then you go down in that string of text messages and then they forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you want a quick yes or no in your text messaging. So you have to be very accurate and blunt in your questions as far as what kind of answer you're looking for. Because you really truly do want one word answers. And by God, do not ask 2 questions in one text. You literally have to act like you're texting your teenager.
Simple, straight to the point.
Yeah. IGHT.
Yeah. It's all right. I'm bro. My daughter calls me bro. Yo, bro. Why? But kind of looping back into people forget to respond, it literally just triggered my brain right now that I just realized that I got a text message last week from my brother-in-law. I looked at it. I wasn't able to respond to it. And I just remembered now that I still haven't responded to it.
But you mentally responded, right?
I mentally looked, I'm like, I'll respond to him, but I just can't do it right now. And then, yeah, you just totally brought that into mind. So it's these people that, you know, and you got to think from a lead's perspective, they don't even know who you are. Whereas like this is somebody that obviously I know quite well. And I just realized, so now he's probably like, well, she never responded to me. Yeah, so it's kind of goes in hindsight. Sometimes the people that matter most forget to respond back. So it's a high expectation for these people that owe nothing to you or have no idea who you are to always be responsive to you.
And to your point, do you guys observe Father's Day in Canada?
Yeah.
Was it Sunday?
Yeah.
Yes. I have yet to call my dad, and it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
And Sunday, I mean, it's just been balls to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I call him, I want to be able to have the time to call him. I haven't even texted him because it's like out of sight, out of mind. And my dad is very important to me.
Yeah.
And to your point, Crystal, we hold expectations. Just because we think we have communicated something, we take it personal whenever they don't respond back. But that's only the story that we're telling ourselves. That's not that's not the reality. That's not the facts. But what do we hear? Nobody responds to text messages. And I just say, look in the mirror, because there isn't one person that's listening that hasn't forgotten to respond to somebody. So it's one of those things that we get mad at the leads for doing the exact same thing that we do. And especially we get mad at the leads when they're mad at us whenever we call them and they're short with us. But how do we handle telemarketing calls? How do we handle a phone number that we see on our phone? How do we handle it if we even answer the phone? How do we handle it when we answer it? Are we short with people? Do we cut them off whenever we know it's a salesperson? Are we rude to them going, I'm not interested? Or are we polite? And usually that's our mirror, right? And I think it happened in last week's webinar, Crystal, where he was saying something about they don't want to hear this or something. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, it was kind of like he came up with his own ideology of what people want based on, I don't even can remember what it was.
Based on how he feels when it's reversed.
Something, yeah.
Right. And then I called him on it. I said, is that how you feel when you get that phone call? And he's like, absolutely. And I said, but how can you guarantee that that's how the other person feels? We only create the stories that we can identify with and we know. And that takes me back to door knocking. Because when I moved into my first home and I had a 3-year-old and I had a baby, I did not sleep all night. The only rest that I got was right in the middle of the afternoon. And that's when Jehovah's Witness, that's when magazine sales, that's when anybody would come to my door and ring the doorbell. Dogs bark, babies wake up, and then my day is shot. So I disconnected my doorbell. I refuse to knock on people's doors because I don't want to bother somebody, because I knew what it felt like to me. But when you go knock on a door and you debunk that myth, because you then got a listing and you sold it to your buyer and you've created something that was the perfect storm in a good way, that changes that thought process to Heidi. If I knock on enough doors, somebody's selling their house in this neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different story. So I always challenge the fact when you're thinking about your business and you're thinking about the task in front of you, is it fact and reality, or is it the story that you're telling yourself? And the majority of the time, it's the story that we're telling ourselves. And have fun with it and prove it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if it works? What if you can change that story? What if you have that conversation because you called that person at the opportune time?
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel in life that we miss opportunities because we get that feeling or that calling or that whatever to do something, and we get all excited to do it. And then we sit down and we look at our dashboard, and then we get that deer in the headlights and we do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that opportunity is missed, because I really firmly believe that in that moment of calling, there's somebody there waiting to talk to you. But we miss that opportunity because we don't execute. So challenge yourself to get past that little bit of uncomfortableness. And I think anybody can relate to this because it still happens to me. I'm like, oh God, I gotta call these leads. And once you get past the first 2 phone calls, then you're all in. Just
Mm-hmm.
like Crystal going to the gym.
Yeah.
It's
Once
like,
you're
oh,
there, you're there.
how long do we lay in bed in the morning and talk ourselves out of why we shouldn't go and why should we go later and why should we should do this? And
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I sit and I think, I'm like, I could have been at the gym and back home by now.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I've sat here and talked myself in and out of actually doing it. And let's just face it, whether you get up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, or 8 a.m, it still sucks waking up in the morning.
Yep. Yep. Actually, and then you know what? One of my family friends, she's training to do this crazy 70-kilometer uphill run. Why, I don't know, but she likes doing that kind of stuff. But she was waking up at 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and just going to sleep. And she says, you know what? It doesn't matter. And kind of going back on that, it doesn't matter what time you're getting up at. Once you're up, and you're doing it, right? She could have woke up at 2:30 in the morning. She could have woke up at 7:30. That first thought of getting up and getting out the door and doing it is no different, regardless of the time of day that she was getting up at. So that kind of goes into that perspective. And like, she would sleep, obviously. Her body's exhausted when she got home. She'd go to bed earlier to make up for that lost time. But she's like, once you're up. And it's just kind of a matter of getting into those habits and doing things and just self-motivating, really, to, you have a goal at the end of the day, right? So what is it going to take to accomplish that goal? Sometimes it's not fun.
And that's why Agent Locators made it so simple, because when you click on those filters, it's, yes, the goal is having the conversation, but the fun of it is getting it to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And getting it to 0. Because when you get it to 0, you're doing everything you need to be doing every day without thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where the danger zone is when we sit down and we think about it. And I had a huge problem with that. I would look at all the notes and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to call that person because they're a rental lead. Oh, I'm not going to call that person because they're a low value lead. Oh, I'm not going to call that person because they're looking at an area they don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Be great excuses.
At the end of the day, yeah, the only person you're hurting is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're focusing on what's their story, none of that matters.
Mm-hmm.
0 of that matters. I just want to know what their story is. And that goes back to, what's your story? What made you move? And think about every move that you've made in your life. And why was that move made? Think about your parents. Why was every move made? What was the process? How long did that process take from the first time you started talking about the move until you actually executed it? Did you end up moving where you thought you
Mhm.
were going to move? What changed in the process?
Mhm.
And that's where our leads don't suck.
Yeah.
Life is what is determining their trajectory of when and where. We can't make somebody move. Now, can we get somebody off the fence? 100%. Because our job is to equip with the tools for them to make an educated decision. Because there are a lot of times things are up in the air. I mean, even me with myself, when I'm in it, I have a really hard time making forever decisions on moving.
Mhm.
I remember when I had my home in Virginia and I had my condo in Atlanta, and my daughter's staying in our home in Virginia, a 5,000 square foot house all by herself. And she's like, Mom, it's too big. I'm like, yeah, but our mortgage payment's really sweet, honey. Like our mortgage payment is really sweet. And I really don't want to sell because I could rent it out for double what our mortgage payment is.
Mhm.
And she goes, but Mom, it's too much. And then you start looking at all the options. I'm like, okay, my house was built in 2005 and this was 2015, 10 years old. Appliances are going to start to break. Hot water heaters, furnaces, right? Like all
Mhm.
the fun stuff at 10 years that you got to start putting money here and money there. And I'm not there all the time. So do I sell and have her rent somewhere?
Mhm.
Do I sell and buy something that is affordable? What is the rent value if she were to rent? How much would that cost per month? If we bought something, how much would that cost per month? Can we find something that meets our expectations for a value of $1? I mean, for 3 months, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I
Mhm.
love my home. I don't want to sell my home, but something has to change because what's going on is not working.
Mhm.
And those decisions are very difficult when you're in it.
Mhm.
So I relied on my friends that were real estate agents to help provide me with different ideas until I talked it out and it made sense. And here in Alabama, the same thing. We were looking at renting. Well, renting in a vacation destination area is very difficult to find a long-term rental. Everything's VRBO or month by month,
Mhm.
and the expense of it is exorbitant per month. So we do that or do we buy? Well, when you're looking to buy, there ain't much on the market. And we had a time frame. And it's really difficult to make those decisions. And that's our job.
Mhm.
Our job is to provide all of the placebos and let them make those decisions on what's going to be best for their family. But we forget about that because we think we're just in the sales business. We think we're just in the make people move business, but we're not.
No.
So just looking at your leads and open up your dashboard and click on that very first filter. And Crystal, what's the very first filter? If to my
Everyone.
recollection, you've never tried calling them ever.
Mhm. Mhm.
They have a valid or unknown phone number. What's the other
And yeah.
criteria?
So
That's it.
and they yeah, you haven't made contact with them yet,
You haven't made
basically.
contact.
So, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that number one should be cleared out. Number 1 and 2 daily cleared out. Number 3, I start modifying it for people, but you have to be in there. It doesn't make sense, right? So and those that do use those filters, and if you're behind on your filters, it takes a bit to get caught up, to clear them out, hands down. It's a little bit heavier calling. But once you are caught up, the amount of calls that you have to make and perform on a daily basis actually start decreasing because you're that much more structured in your system.
Yeah. And it really, setting up those systems and being consistent, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse all the time saying this, but it really warrants repetition because the
Mhm.
industry has really pushed speed to lead, speed to lead, speed to lead, but no one's ever talked about the consistency factor of it.
Yeah.
And, back in the day, Keller Williams, 2 hours lead gen, 2 hours lead gen, 2 hours lead gen. That's all well and good, But the reality of it is it, what word am I looking for? Is it something that we can keep up with?
Mhm,
Is it attainable? Is it attainable? Obtainable? I don't,
mhm.
you know what I'm trying to say though. Is
Yeah.
it something that you can withstand through the end of time in your
Mhm.
business?
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't. 2 hours of sitting just there on the phone after phone after phone after phone. It just becomes so mundane. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And
Mhm.
that's hence the filters
Yeah.
of always knowing that you are working on your highest priority. Because at the end of the day, we want a return. We want a return on our investment of time. We want a return on our investment of money.
Mhm.
What is our highest and best use of time? And it's really, in my mind, besides the people that we have set reminders for and the follow-ups with, it's the people that we've never spoke to.
Yeah.
And I love it because 23 seconds next, 23 seconds next, 23 seconds next. You've
Mhm.
just created a rhythm and hopefully a new habit that it shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes a day.
No, it should. Well, yeah, I'm going to show you guys something. I'm opening up a CRM system. I just had to make sure everything was blurred out
Ooh, I
for
get excited.
this. So
I get excited.
this individual, okay, and let me just my zoom here. This individual from day one has made sure that they followed my guidance to a T. Okay, so they're using their filters on a daily basis. So this is someone with 982 leads. If we go into his save filters, number one, there's no one in here. Number two, there's one person in here. Number three, are you sure this one's empty? These are people he's made contact with that he hasn't sorted as for his follow-up. Then we go into his check-ins. He's got one person in this one. He's got a few in this one. So far today, he's made 32 phone calls from 900 leads because he's got them all strategically placed that he knows exactly when he needs to follow up with them. He's not calling them, aimlessly just for, because he didn't log anything or he doesn't have any systems in place. Everything is structured in here. This individual hits a 2% conversion rate the first year just by being organized and structured in a system. It's all here. It's all just dynamic. It's just a matter of being consistent with this. And I bet you if I check later today, this will all be empty. Every filter would be empty.
So do me a favor, just clear the filters. I want to see how many leads are in here.
982. And he's made 32. So he contacted 32 leads today by phone. So 32 phone calls.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And as we were talking about the highest and best use of time, do me a favor now, Crystal, in the add filter items, just pull pipeline. I want to know who is not set, not set, new lead, tried to contact.
I was non-responsive as well.
There you
Those
go.
are people that he
But
had.
a 982 leads, there's 530. This is always going to be the bulk of your database, always.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
these ones here, yeah, so Colin, right? So he's still like, these are new leads. But 4 calls on them one day, 7 calls. So he's consistent. He is going through and making sure he is calling and he's consistent with those calls.
Yep.
Gain those connections.
So now do me another favor, go to the top.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not following your filters and you have like a crap ton of people in your filters and it overwhelms you, even out of these 530, don't let yourself get overwhelmed, because out of these 530, the most important people, if you don't even want to set any other filter, it's going back to the activity dates.
Mm-hmm.
When were they the most active? Now, in order to find the older leads that are active, so he just got a call back. Is that what
No,
that
that's
was?
my phone. That's my phone. Yeah, I got a robocall.
So in order to take 530, and this is where we talk about the GPS when you jump in your car and you set your destination, it's 530 miles. All we're gonna do now is create the turns and the exits.
Mhm.
Out of the 530, we've never spoke to them, so they're all the same, but they've each one had different habits.
Mhm.
So you have active and inactive.
Yeah.
So just for shits and giggles, can you pull the inactive leads, the leads that have like never read, that have never logged in?
It won't be, no, you won't be able to do that. The only thing we can do is, last activity property view is not, everyone within the, let's say within the last 60 days.
Okay, yep, there you go, perfect.
So out of that, there's 406 of them that have not been active within the last 60 days.
So, and that's another big bulk. So
Mhm.
this is a great opportunity for a mass email.
Yeah.
And you can literally touch 406 leads in a nanosecond.
Mhm.
Because all you want to do is start the process of them raising their hand.
Yeah.
Whether it's F off or it's I'm looking at properties.
Mhm.
You can literally send out 406 emails, and all your subject line has to be is a call to action, so to speak, right? Think what's going to make somebody open an email. It's got to be a very attractive subject line. And I love doing this around holidays because you can get really creative. 4th of July, what's the biggest bang for the biggest bang for your buck in the housing market? They're going to open it. I promise you, they're going to open it.
Yeah. It's being creative. Yeah. Not seeming too spammy with those.
Well, and the best
subjects,
way
right?
to do this, honest to God, the best way to do this is go online and sign up for shit yourself.
Yeah.
Because everybody has email campaigns right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get 2 a day. Sometimes I get 1 a day. Sometimes I get 1 a week from everything that I've signed up for. But they all have really catchy subject lines. And the fun thing is, I love doing little surveys, right? So if you're sending out something, let's just say 4th of July, because it's the next holiday coming up. Which home has the biggest bang for the buck? Put 3 pictures in that email and rate them 1, 2, 3. Email me back 1, 2, or 3. Which home you think is the biggest bang for the buck?
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're starting a communication channel.
Yeah.
And go, oh, LOL, that's great. Yeah, number 2 is pretty cool. Just by the way, are you thinking about buying a home in the future? That's all you want, is to open up that line of communication. And
you can even do that with your own listings. Do 3 of your own listings. Which one? And it's like, oh, you're interested in taking a look.
Yeah.
That's one of our active ways. Like, just be creative. It's creativity and fun, right? Fun with what you're doing, engaging as well, right? With those individuals. It's creating something different. It's thinking outside the box of what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. And watch other marketing campaigns. When you're listening to the radio, when you're watching TV, when you see other emails coming through, how can you spin it to your marketing message? Chick-fil-A is probably one of the best marketing and geniuses out there. I really swear to God. Chick-fil-A's cornered the market on marketing. Chick-fil-A, I think, do you have Geico up there, the insurance?
We get the commercials. I don't know if we have Geico, but I know we get the commercials up here.
Yeah.
The little lizard. Yeah.
I mean, it sticks,
Yeah.
and it's like, how can you utilize that into your own marketing and do a spoof? It's like, there's the movies that are like the make fun of the real movies. People love that.
Yes, they do. And like it's funny, creativity, it just draws attention. You see it all the time now, different individuals on social media creating, pretty funny, relatable content for their audiences, just with, what it's like to be a realtor, or just various things, right? But it has drawn so much attention, has created so much business and opportunity for this person simply because they were just different than everyone else.
Well, in another way to, if you're not feeling creative yourself, look at what the top Google searches are. What
Mhm.
are people Googling in the housing market? What questions are they asking? And that's what I do when I write my blogs.
Mhm.
What are the top questions that are being asked in the housing market? What are the top questions that are being asked by real estate agents? And that's how we do our blogs.
Mhm.
Because if you're hitting that dynamic of the question that's being most asked, you're solving the problem. You're being the expert.
Mhm.
Create your subject line and get it out there, because then your open rate's going to go up. So you ran here, Crystal, the ones that are active over the last 60 days.
That we're not. Yeah, this one here is the ones that have been active. So there's 104. So these would be the people that now we've taken that to 104
And
that are
now you can take this down even more if you want to text them.
I need
Add
to
your
know.
filter with a good phone number that you can
Mhm.
text. If you
Yep.
want to call them, add the filter with the phone with a valid or
Yeah.
unknown and
So
call
we
them.
can do,
If you want to
phone
email,
valid is, unknown or valid, unknown or valid. We're down to 52. So now you've
yeah,
taken 500 people down to 52.
yep.
So it's a lot easier to look at something. You're not feeling so overwhelmed. And like I've said it many times before, and you do it kind of like with the travel. We're going to go 500 miles to wherever. I do it's kind of like your junk drawer, your closets that are massive, your pantry. When we open those things, we know that they need to be cleaned, right, or tidied, or whatever it might be. But because it's such a big job, we close it. So that's another day's problem. Whereas if we kind of broke it down into, so okay, today I'm going to just organize these two bottom shelves. So the bottom shelf, let me just figure out this first. Then it's not so overwhelming. And oddly enough, you might actually catch yourself doing more anyway, because once you start doing it, you start to get involved and invested with what you're doing. And then you might take let's say these 52 where you're like, I'm just going to call half of them. But once you got past, like, let's say 25, you're like, well, might as well, I'm halfway, might as well just finish all of them.
Or just save it as a temporary filter.
Yeah.
Call half of them today, call half of them tomorrow, call 10 today, call 20 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the other piece of this is 52 leads. You can call them and then text them,
Mm-hmm.
or you can text them, see who raises their hand and decide who you want to call.
Mm-hmm.
But a great text that we really do get a lot of response from is, I just had an out of town buyer cancel their showings this weekend and have an appointment open up. Is there any homes that you want to see?
Mm-hmm.
That one usually, because right now these 52 people that have been active, they're aware that they're online looking.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not completely taken back by the text message. So whatever you can communicate to say, is there any homes that you're looking at online that you would like to take a physical tour of? All you're asking is a yes or no.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? That someone says yes? Great. What are your plans?
Mm-hmm.
What can I help you with? That's it.
As simple as that.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
If you do send out 52 text messages, be sure that you have the time to sit there to respond for at
Yes.
least the next half hour.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to send out a text message and
not
act
be
like a robot, right? Robots
Yeah.
are better at responding than we are as people, I promise you.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
be real, because people are used to the AI.
Exactly. And like, yeah, people will respond, and a lot of people forget that, oh, I'm going to send it. Like, I've done it. So I'm going to blast out this list because, I don't have time to call them all. I'm just going to blast them all and see who just gets back to me. It is, of course, at the end of the day, never thought, oh, shoot, people might actually respond to all these text messages. And now I'm sitting there responding all these text messages way past, the time that, I'm scheduled to stop working at, because I didn't think about the fact of, yes, it's easy to blast it all out, but you also got to account for all the incoming responses that you're going to receive as well. And you want to be responsive. We're not going to be, the jerk that sends somebody a message and then just doesn't respond when they reply back. Right? Because then they kind of know, well, this doesn't seem very realistic now.
100%.
Awesome. That was a good discussion.
Absolutely. We always pull them
Mhm.
out.
And again, if you guys, anyone on here, so today I had a hard time finding someone to be our guest of honor. So if anyone on here wants us to jump into your CRM system, potentially Beverly can jump on the calls or give you some guidance as to what she spots in there. By all means, you can send me an email or even reach out to support. We'd be happy to have you guys on because we're always looking.
Yes, please.
Everyone loves watching the webinars, but everyone's a little timid when it comes to being on. That's okay, but
It's like you have a free ISA for an hour.
exactly. Awesome.
Thank
Always
you,
a pleasure,
Crystal.
Beverly.
I will see you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, in July already.
I know, right? Time flies. It's crazy.
It sure
Crazy.
does.
Awesome.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.